Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session. Pleased to be joined here by um, Rodrigo Sanchez Prandi. And this session, just to make sure you're in the right one, is called Seizing Opportunity in Emerging Digital Payment Markets. We're going to talk about um, the opportunity and how payment systems differ across countries and what it takes to enable penetration to provide some of the services that we take for granted today in the US, like Amazon and Netflix and other subscription services, to countries where the e-commerce and, more importantly, the payments markets aren't as developed. And so it's not just a matter of providing a payment type, but thinking about how that delivery is rolled out and how consumers can pay for them. A little bit background myself. My name is Gary Stein. I am the Chief Product and Compliance Officer for OPI USA. We're a subsidiary of an Australian-based buy now, pay smarter company called OpenPay. OpenPay is 8 years old, trades on the Australian Stock Exchange, and launched as a buy now, pay later company in Australia. And has since expanded to New Zealand and the UK, and we're taking our services to South Beach, no, actually to the United States. Over the course of OpenPay's existence, we've kind of evolved from a typical buy now, pay later, as we think of a pay in four firm that serves primarily millennials in those markets and that might be credit card averse, to one where we are providing really point of sale installment lending to a greater swath of consumers, and to enable them to make purchases with credit and spread the costs of those purchases out over several months and do so with confidence and transparency. And I'm proud to be bringing OPI and OpenPay to the US, and we'll launch later this year, focusing on verticals in the healthcare space, auto servicing, private education, home improvement, large ticket retail, among others, first in the physical point of sale, and then in e-commerce. And we can talk more about that, but I'm pleased to be joined by Rodrigo here, who comes as SVP from dLocal. Rodrigo, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you've done?
Thanks, Gary, for that intro. So hi, everybody. I'm Rodrigo. I lead product at dLocal. I've been with the company since day one in 2016. What we do at dLocal is that we provide payment solutions for international companies in emerging markets. So right now we are processing different payment solutions in Latin America, Africa, and Asia, across all these regions, to enable international companies to access their users in these countries. We've been doing this since 2016. We've recently done our IPO in NASDAQ 2.5 months ago. So really excited about the growth that we have been seeing. We started processing payments in Brazil for companies that needed to penetrate that market, and seeing the hurdles that international credit cards have in these markets. And then we expanded across all these 30 countries across these regions. We are gladly offering our merchants such as Amazon, Spotify, Didi, and others to not only process payments from their users in these markets, but also sending payments, so basically sending payouts to their users, their drivers for ride sharing, hosts for renting e-commerce sites, and others. And then also offering issuing cards locally for also their users. There are marketplaces where we see a need of basically giving these local cards, so users can also process payments and use their balances from this marketplace in any commerce that they'd like across the country. So yeah, really excited to be here. Thanks, Gary, for the intro, and happy to discuss digital payments in all these fun and interesting markets.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. And I can tell you, having spent 8 months trying to launch one company in the US, the fact that you guys have entered 30 in 5 years, it just blows my mind. And so just fabulous. And also as background, so, you know, for full disclosure, I'm a recovering regulator. I used to work for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau here in the US, and I led public policy on a number of issues, including the development of faster payments in the US. And in fact, I met some of my current CEO working on the steering committee of the Fed's Faster Payments Task Force, where, you know, the Fed pulled together 360 plus of its closest friends to kind of think about how do we build a real-time payment infrastructure in the US, and proud that's led to the development of RTP and Zelle and FedNow and others. But you know, we often talk then that the US had probably fallen behind other countries in the emergence of real-time payment systems. I think in part because we've enjoyed ubiquitous payment capabilities, you know, from check to credit card and to debit. And so, you know, as we've built that up, there's been some urgency to it and there's business driving it, but not, I think, of the nature of what you're talking about, where there's just a majority of folks that are probably on a cash-based system. Is that generally the case?
Yes, correct. So in many of these regions, I would say that cash is still king. So many governments and regulators are trying to see the benefits of, as you said, faster payment, digital payments, and so how they can basically leapfrog the current status and going from cash to digital payments. And we've seen different initiatives in Mexico with Cody, Brazil launching Pix last year, or India with UPI IMPS, where we see that trend. We see how the government is pushing, not maybe in the US where the optionality reigns there. Here, the government is mandating all these financial institutions, but you see the impact in the usage of digital payments. You see the growth that that they are presenting across the board, and we see the users basically benefiting from it and using them more ubiquitously in that sense.
That's great. By the way, I don't know if just background, I got a little static when you were talking there. I don't know if that's on my end, your end, or whatever, but Shiloh and folks, let us know if it's just me. I can certainly bear with it. And just to let everybody know, I'm going to go through, we'll have a little like fireside chat here. I should have said that up front, but we're going to leave the last 10 or so minutes for questions as we go along. So yeah, you touched on a number of things there. And I mean, I just think the business model is fascinating. And I would think, you know, as you enter a new market, there have to be obviously several challenges. Some of those challenges present opportunities. That's why you're going to be there. But as I was thinking through this, like, you know, you've got obviously different regulatory regimes in each of these markets that you have to navigate. And then a key challenge of this is going to be the consumer reach, or to the degree that your services are all to support direct to consumer services. There could be, I suppose, some to business owners, and cultivating that supply of the payment system versus the consumer demand, you know, could have some offsetting things. And then, you know, I would think then there's the players themselves, you know, ecosystem monopolies. You know, you've probably got things that are semi-private, semi-public going on. I would imagine these types of things figure into how you've prioritized the market opportunities. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And then also how you've navigated some of these challenges, and maybe how, if you could compare and contrast a couple of markets on like how that's gone.
Yes, so let's go on a deep dive on this. So yeah, first of all, in order to assess the market, how dLocal plays in these ecosystems, that we are a platform player, and we want to bridge that gap between the merchants that are usually international ones and the users in these regions. So our platform is completely agnostic on the payment methods themselves. So we can easily adapt if a market, let's say Mexico, that it's really cash heavy, to present cash options to Mexican users, but going to Chile with you have more bank transfers, or Kenya using M-Pesa and mobile money as main pay methods, and then others obviously credit cards, debit cards still are across the spectrum. In that sense, as you said, there is one component of basically connecting the merchants, the internet companies with all these payment methods, and then the other part of how you go through the financial hurdles and how you go with all the operational and regulatory challenges that each country faces. The reality is that we need to do that work so our clients don't need to, but basically we need to have those connections with the central banks, with the local regulators, with tax authorities, with the payment players there. So as dLocal as a whole can process payments, and then we can make all the financial and regulatory needs that are asked to basically also get the funds to our merchants wherever they are, if they are in the US, in Europe, or in Asia. And we can make that seamlessly for our clients. And in terms of payments and everything, you see those differences. And for example, Brazil with Pix, that it's something that was launched recently, a few months ago, last year. And one of the key things for dLocal was that we were working with the central bank from early days. So we were all set up as any other financial institution in Brazil to launch Pix payments on November 16th. So November 16th, we were already there. And that is thanks to all the years that we have been working closely with the central bank, basically establishing ourselves as a key financial institution in the country, as well in others. And that's how we basically were able to bring, for example, Pix as a digital payment to merchants. And the other thing is that many of these payment methods are purely local plays. So basically, if you think about, OXXO in Mexico, if you think about M-Pesa in Kenya, Pix in Brazil, UPI in India, those are payment systems that are starting getting widespread adoption or already being used heavily by users in the country. But there is no way to make an international transaction as you do with a credit card, with a Visa or Master credit card. So you need to have your partner in the country, or basically going the merchant, the e-commerce going itself to open all this structure within the country to basically operate and unlock all this segment of the population that maybe doesn't access a credit card, or they see the easiness and the simplicity of these pay methods that bring the user to pay with Pix, whether they are paying their groceries or paying on a restaurant or making a purchase on Spotify to getting 2-3 months of their subscription with the service. So that's what we try to bring to the table, add that value while keeping all those hurdles and all those challenges, making them, as you said, an opportunity and a value added for our clients.
That makes sense. So you touched on a number of things I was thinking about here. So you talked about your relationship with the central bank in Brazil. And so I guess one side, like before the Pix was launched there, were you providing services under using different payment systems? And then I'm just curious, okay. And then I'm curious, like what is the lead time, to get set up in these countries? Again, 30 countries in the span of 5 years is pretty impressive penetration. Did you have to start talking to 30 countries all at once, and then they've all bloomed at the same time, or how did that work out?
Yes. So I'll go into Brazil first, and then kind of a quick recap, and then going with the entire expansion project that we have. yeah, first Brazil, Pix was launched now, but of course you had all the credit and debit cards. And then Brazil, I know if you know about this, but basically Boleto Bancario is one of the main payment methods that is kind of a bank voucher where you can just use it. Usually, historically, the users were paying with cash in local stores and paying that voucher. Then it started shifting towards using your home banking app to pay for these boletos. But as just to give you one figure, so to understand the volume of Pix that was launched in November, now it has grown tremendously. In July 2021, it moved almost 900 million transactions and accounting for $100 million through Pix. That is already a volume higher than Boleto in Brazil. So basically, we see that switch. We see that people are adopting this. They were used to paying with Boleto and everything, but now we see that trend going to digital, and that doesn't happen because the government mandates. It happens because there is a true benefit for Brazilians, and they are seeing that and they are acting on top of that. And then on the expansion side, I would say that yes, we move fast. It's something that we are really proud of, that of how we can work for our merchants, so how we can solve these problems. If you think about these countries, they have different hurdles, especially in the regulatory side, tax implications, and we want to overcome that. We are a team that it's spread around the world. We are more than 500 people working across, I would say, like 30 countries different. We are originally from South America, but then we started expanding. So we lived all these problems. I'm from Uruguay, so if you don't know, it's a really small country between Argentina and Brazil. We are just 3 million people. So from day one, we knew that we needed to look outside of Uruguay because of the size of the market. And that makes us adapt really quickly to these situations. And once you go through 1 to 10 different countries on launching them and understanding, you start getting your playbook correct and you start getting traction on that. So last year we had a round from the lead investor was General Atlantic that basically gave us the unicorn status at that point, and basically that sped up our expansion plans. And we are investing heavily in Africa. We're investing heavily in Asia, specifically Southeast Asia, and basically understanding that framework, understanding the payment methods, understanding the regulatory issues, and how we can work on that, and how we can bring speediness to our merchants to launch the market and process locally, seeing that benefit between processing internationally versus going local and getting the right payment methods for their users.
That's wild. So as you enter into these countries, obviously it sounds like you've got folks on the ground, boots on the ground in these countries. Are you generally entering organically or via acquisition? Like, what's the playbook look like?
It's been organic so far.
Okay.
So basically understanding the market, getting the right people working with us. It's key to have people that can understand the market. So basically if we go to Nigeria, they understand the Nigerian market, but also we bring them to our culture, how we want to work things, how we want to bring everything that our merchants need. So have that client focused mindset, and that speed is key for us. So kind of how we can make that cultural fit while understanding really well the payments landscape in the country, and how we can make those connections with the regulators and so on. So yeah, that's the idea. That's how we are framing this. And that's how we have been growing so far.
Wow. So You talked about, or you kind of alluded to the fact about transfers and cash-based societies. So I would expect that as you've come in there, and you mentioned a little bit about this, about paying Uber drivers and others, that in the, it's not just being able to connect a merchant. Like there may be specific capabilities that one might have to introduce to make that end-to-end connection. For example, if we've had walk-up bill pay in the US and other markets and things like that. Maybe talk a little bit to some of the things that you guys have had to do to bridge the gaps.
Yeah, sure. So again, I think at least personally on my side, coming from a country that really understood this, it was key for us. So here in my apartment, you go downstairs, you have a local store where everybody is coming to pay their utility bills. So you see at 8, 9 p.m., you see the line of 20 people doing the line every month, paying there. So it's kind of bread and butter for us. It's what we see every day. And so how we can make that transition towards a fully digital experience. So that's key for us in a sense that what we try to do is not only create those connections with these different payment methods, especially with cash, but also how we can improve that experience and for a customer of ours that is selling digital services, SaaS, or whatever that is fully digital, how they can consume all of this. So on that side, our platform is key on basically how we can automatize everything for merchants. So everything is fully based on APIs. Everything is readable and you get access of every payment in real time. And on our side, we do two things. One is we try to, as I said, bridge that gap with the technology or with the operational processes on our side. So basically how we can present everything to the user, how we can guide the user towards the next local store where they can pay easily instead of going like 5 blocks, how they can go 1 block from their house and pay. So basically giving them those options, giving them those aids. And then the other thing that we do is that we work with the payment processors locally to improve their system for digital payments. So how not only us, we can make that bridge, but also how they can see what is coming from, what are the needs of these international players, and how they can improve their processes, how they can make the needed changes to go towards those digital payments instead of keeping it as it is. And so those kind of relationships, they are not from one day to another. They get built. But luckily, we have been doing that in many countries, making those relationships stronger. And basically, at the end, you see that you have a partner. You don't have a processor that is processing and then charging you. You have a partner that is growing with you. And that's what we try to have in both sides, from the client side and also from our payment side.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you about next, is whether how you guys have helped to move some of these payment systems forward. So I could imagine that there might be instances where something like an M-Pesa or starts as a P2P payment system and then evolves into something that can be used for consumer to business payments. Or instances in which, I could think of a few different flavors. So there's that, which I think would be a really interesting aspect. Like, what do you need to do to make it happen? I would imagine there would also be other things that you see where maybe the payment system exists and it's kind of in an infantile basis and it doesn't have some of the capabilities that we take for granted, like that are really necessary from maybe a consumer protection standpoint, like being able to access transaction histories or security protocols. And so how you introduce those. So I'll pause it right there. I have a third one, but I'm curious about like if you can provide a couple of examples of some things that you've done along that route.
I think one of the things is that I know I'm going to go a little bit more technical, but basically response times for card processing. So if you put your card in the US, you get the response back in 2 or 3 seconds tops. In some of these countries, you can wait up to 10, 15 seconds for that same answer. So how, and that's something that we don't have control because sometimes infrastructure in the country is outdated and processes take longer than usual. So basically how you can work with them to say, okay, we are at 10 seconds, how we can go to 8, now how we can go to 6, how we can go to 4, and showing them, okay, this is not something that we want just for being nitpicky or just for the sake of it. You can see that this is standard in developed markets. So basically how we can, again, bridge that gap and how we can connect them. So the international merchant doesn't need to worry about a different experience in the US, in Europe, or in Chile. So that's what we work with them. And sometimes we can solve it on our end. Sometimes we need that partnership with the local player to make those improvements come to life.
Yeah, I think that's a great example because I think about the business that we're in, which is really point of sale lending. And, you know, there's a whole, the whole way that we used to use credit is you pretty much have to get it in advance and then, you know, you can use it. And that works well. I mean, you know, I like my credit card, my points. Half of us are revolvers. I mean, transactors, but the other half are revolvers. And so there's a lot of people that say, okay, you know, I've given you this great buying power, and now that requires some consumer discipline to use it versus if it's delivered at the point of sale, specifically for a transaction. I think the risk profile changes, but that's only possible if you can decision somebody or you can approve and decline somebody in enough time that someone says, I don't have the patience for this. You know, I'm going to work it. And so I would imagine the types of things you're talking about bring, you know, something that might be used again from a P2P standpoint, like I can pay you, you know, but now to use it as point of sale, it's really going to be dependent upon that dynamic because there's a queue of people behind me, right? And so that's what opens up that marketplace.
Yeah, totally. I think we are seeing those changes, especially in these markets, and how, I mean, it all comes down to the benefits that you give the user, right? How they are making that payment, how they are choosing from one payment method to another. And so giving those added value props to them is key in that side. And they will decide and they will make the market. So in that sense, it's key to go there to, as you said, for example, M-Pesa, starting with P2P, now their transactions account for, I think, 50% of Kenya's GDP. It's massive.
Yeah.
You see them that it's not only Kenya, they are expanding, they are now in 10 countries. So you see how those benefits from that niche, they start spreading. And yeah, it's great to be there in the middle, trying to knowing the trends, trying to get them and having both ends, and then see how the market reacts, and then see how you can also bring your own acumen and your own expertise to see how you can also leverage that to make it work. So yeah, it's really interesting and exciting.
So what to what degree are these payment systems drawing from sources of credit versus like a cash or deposit account?
So you have the trend of buy now, pay later. As you said, now I think in Latin America and other markets, you had installments already ingrained in consumer habits. So basically in Latin America, you have around 30% of purchases are done with installments in credit card. You have many times with offers with no interests and so on that make it really easy to use it. And then you have this trend of how you can decouple those loans, those micro loans with credit card systems. So you have BNPL that are starting a little bit to rise a little bit. India, we are seeing a huge growth of around 36% annual growth in terms of BNPL that are creating more business cases and more usage. So you can see that that snowball becoming a reality and making an impact in the overall payment ecosystem. I'd say right now, those are the main focus that we are seeing. Let's see how I think in the next 12 to 18 months, we will see a lot of companies. You have a lot of startups that are getting tons of funding towards that BNPL market. You see that in the US, in Europe, in Australia. So it's something that at that point we said before that these emerging markets were kind of leapfrogging. I think in BNPL we're trying to see that the developed markets are more advanced in that sense. But yeah, it's something that it's exciting to see how the market evolves in that sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. And so when you talk about, obviously I'm familiar because of OpenPay and OPI in the US, Australia, and the UK, and BNPL. You talked about installments. I think there's an emerging paradigm where BNPL comes to represent that costless pay in 3, pay in 4 kind of transaction. And what we are looking to launch in the US is really more of an installment loan. The consumer is charged a fee. APRs are always in the single digits though, but we might go up to 24 months, on a payment. So it sounds like, which has been I guess a long-term method of credit in Latin America is what you're saying, but you're now seeing this come to the point of sale as well as the pay in the shorter costless buy now, pay later.
Correct. So basically having an instant credit assessment at the POS and then making that decision right away, giving that credit or not. We are seeing many companies trying to grow in that sense. And yeah, installment is something that you go to the supermarket and you pay in 12 installments. So
Right.
So it's something that it's already ingrained here. But basically
The supermarket. You go to the supermarket, wait, to make your payments or to finance?
No, to buy groceries.
To finance your lettuce and apples and chicken?
Pay. So one of the things that we have is that inflation. So in many of these markets, so it makes sense sometimes to pay things in 6-12 months and with no interest instead of basically paying now, so you pay a bit less further the line.
I think my head of risk would have a heart attack. To finance something that you ate 12 months ago doesn't sell anything.
It's interesting to say the least, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I know we are, I think only have maybe a couple minutes left. I don't know if there have been any questions that have come in. If anybody has a question for Rodrigo or myself, I see in the chat. Time. I think we ran out of time and didn't see any questions. So apologies for that. But Rodrigo, that was fantastic. I just find your business fascinating and your experiences. And so I would have just enjoyed one-on-one asking you all these questions, but hopefully the audience got something out of it as well. So thank you all for attending and look forward to following up. And I think you can reach both Rodrigo and I through the Wova app. If you have any follow-up questions, we certainly welcome them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gary, for your time. Also, it was a great chat. And thanks everybody for joining and listening a little bit of what we're doing. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.